I stepped out of my body so fast, there was no pain. I floated out of my body and I could literally see myself, just like I'm, seeing you here, Christy, looking at you. I was looking at my body. I'm going, damn, that's just such a small percentage of who I really am. So I noticed that I lived 22 years in about, say, maybe a flash of a second. And I'm going, how did I do that? And then I saw myself ascending through the water. I could feel the rocks and then the water and then just bliss state.
Kia ora, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of your show, and I'm excited to be back chatting with another interesting guest this week. Today I'm chatting with Sajady, who is a multiple near-death experiencer. He's a meditator, and he is someone who's all about living life with passion, purpose, and meaning. Some of my favorite things, which you'll know if you've been following the podcast. Following his near-death experiences, Mas works through a realm of consciousness, of frequencies and space-time, and he helps people to create success, abundance, and fulfillment from the inside out. Through accessing higher consciousness, Mas has helped people to reach their full potential and achieve meaningful success. Mas has worked with business leaders, professional athletes, celebrities, royal family, and Fortune 500 executives, and is also the host of the Xponential Intelligence Podcast. So Mas, welcome along to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. It's fabulous to have you here.
Thanks, Christy. It's fabulous to be here. Absolutely.
Where do we start with this? Where do we begin with everything you've experienced, your journey, and where you are today?
Well, I'd like to start out with maybe just kind of highlighting what I learned from the 3 near-death experiences. So the first near-death, I was a searcher. I was a seeker, in my early teens. I wanted to know what really life was about, I was searching. I searched religion, I searched the motivational aspect or leadership aspect or success aspect and so on. But, it led me to a lot more questions than answers because, I saw the people who were wealthy and again, they had a lot of issues. Saw the people who were really spiritual and they had a lot of issues. I go, so what was that one key that really helps us, expand? Well, the answer doesn't come in the brain here. So I was literally groomed to have my first near-death experience. And that's really key for those individuals who have near-death experiences, being groomed or being awakened. So so you can take advantage of the near-death. So having or searching or just wanting that desire to understand what life is about led me towards that near-death experience, which I had my jaws crushed in a rail car accident. I used to unload rail cars, as a college job when I was in my 20s, about 21, 22. And so I'm not going to get into all the details, but basically they have these moving walls inside the rail cars, that keep the products in place. That was stuck and I offered to climb up and pull on the top of the wall while my teammates were pulling on the bottom of the wall. And it all of a sudden it gave way and this half-ton wall just slid across the railing and then it crushed my jaw and that's what stopped it. So my head was over here, my body was dangling over here. And it was an amazing experience, by the way. You might think it was painful and not, but I stepped out of my body so fast, there was no pain. All that was is like I floated out of my body and I could literally see myself, just like I'm, seeing you here, Christy, looking at you. I was looking at my body. I'm going, damn, that's just such a small percentage of who I really am. It's like, you poor thing, I felt sorry that I was so limited in that physical body, and that was it. That's all the mention I gave to my life. Literally, that was about it. It's like, and then I paid attention to the possibilities of who I became. Nowadays, I call it the 99% of who we are. The 1%, we literally live in physical form. The 99% is the possibilities of who we are. And that's what I was into. It's like, oh my God, this is what I was searching for. This is like the answer to success and the answer to spirituality and all that. And then as I was feeling the amount of love and the joy, and the passion actually for life, literally, I ascended into the higher realms, went through the rail car. I could feel me going through the metal of the rail car and into, I guess, heaven. And this is where you would call it the tunnel of light people go into, where people might meet their loved ones who have crossed over, or their pets or whoever. I didn't go through that stage because that's an initial stage. I went past that into, I would say, the fourth, fifth layer. There's about 13 different layers in the tunnel, so to speak. And that fourth layer is about life, a life review, as many people call it. But it's not really a life review, it's a life relive. So in that time, and again, the difference between me and most people who had near death, I was conscious of what I was going through. So I was basically aware of what, again, I was noticing what I was noticing. So I was noticing that I was living through time. That's why I don't say it's a life review. It's not where, you have a saint or God or an angel like sitting across from you and like checking you off, going, oh, you did this good, you did this bad, you did this good. What the hell happened here? We're going to have to dock you some points, stuff like that. It's nothing like that. You relive all of your life, in my case, 22 years of life, maybe within a flash of a second. And so you literally go through every experience that you did, but you go through an awakened experience. And this really showed me that the situations that we have in life, the things that you go, gosh, I made a mistake. I should have done this. Why did that happen to me? And so on like that. It's like, oh, it was like patterns that happened to me. That's all. It wasn't because I was a bad person or I came from I'm paying back, karma and all that stuff. I was just noticing that, oh, I was a program that I was running that allowed this to happen. And that was it. So I knew who I was. That was just the experience that I was having in my life. Right? Most people attach meaning, like going, I'm a bad person, I'm a good person, to their lives. It's not about that. It's just the experience that you're having. So I noticed that I lived 22 years in about, say, maybe a flash of a second. And I'm going, how did I do that? Because you really literally live, those 22 years. So that allowed me to understand the concepts of time dimension, or how time gets expanded or compressed, which we'll come back to later, by the way. At that level, the amount of love is really fantastic. The amount of passion is really fantastic. You start to understand the true beauty of, the parents and whoever that you're with, because you get to see them at a higher level, not at the distorted level that we are, so you get to see the beauty and grace in everybody, basically. And then it was I guess it was time for me to go home. And then it's like, yeah, you can stay here. And you really enjoy staying there, it's like, you can stay here, but you got to go back. So they kind of give you a choice, but then they just push you back into your body. And that's where I started to experience the pain. And everything blacked out. The next thing I know, I was in the hospital with my jaws wired shut because everything was cracked, like from here down. So it took me about 3-4 months, but it was the most, I would say, exquisite time, because everything was so vibrant and fresh. It was amazing. Even the pain was like, whoa, that's really cool, because I was noticing myself from an outer or a higher perspective of self. So that first near death really allowed me to like expand and understand that we're more than who we think we are here, and we're not limited. We just have to access the possibilities within us, not outside of us. Yeah. Which gives us the possibilities of what we can do on the outside. So that was the first near death. I can explain the second one, or I don't know if you have a question.
That would be great. Absolutely.
Well, the second one was in my mid-40s, and that one was a drowning accident. We were in Belize, and we were inner tubing, and I got sucked into what they call a cenotes, or just basically a hole in the river that goes into the bowels of the earth. I got sucked in there, and the same thing happened. It's like, and I thought to myself, it's like, gosh, I never thought I'd be dying in, on vacation, or I thought I'd be a lot better off. But anyway, I saw the beauty, I saw the grace, I saw my body get it floating away. And then, I just saw my body floating away deeper into the earth. And then I saw myself ascending through the water. I could feel the rocks and then the water and then just bliss state. In the experience, I could feel myself go through the tunnel and just graduate. So at that level, you aren't supposed to come back. But somehow I peeked behind the curtain, which was really cool because then I understood what time and space is about. At that level, you're free, to be anywhere, do anything that you want. You're really expansive. All things can happen to you all at once, which was really cool. The amount of love or the presence of love is just so raw and intoxicating. If you can multiply any amount of love or joy that you've experienced in this world and multiply it by about 1,000,000 times, that's the amount of love that you have up there. And it's just pure raw love. There is no, whatever different types of love there are here. And it was expensive. But I went even deeper. I started to notice again, I was very aware of what was around me. And I really started to notice that, gosh, if I thought of being in Paris, I would just morph into, say, the frequencies of Paris, and it's just like, wow, it felt so cool. You could literally, I was like conscious enough to go, gosh, I want to go to Paris. I want to be this. And you would morph into whatever you wanted to be, I wanted, it sounds kind of crazy, but, I wanted to be an eagle. And it's like, wow, eagle. So it felt, cool. I felt like being an eagle. I know. And then I go, well, I want to be like water. And then it's like, well, what type of water? It's like, well, I don't know. It's like, so it's like raging waves, and so you really felt the presence of being in, like high tide waves, or the calmness of water as well, which is water, but very, very different. So they were showing me where I was, seeing myself in different versions of what we could be, which allowed me to go even deeper because I still had an identity at that point of, again, a consciousness or a physical form. And so I left the physical form, and that's where I became like pure spirit, and no limitations. And that, I had to transcend beyond what I would call, or into the beautiful blue space, which has no time, no space. It's just, you are. And you feel like a universe of your own, and it's just bliss for you. And I was quite aware, and there is no time. I don't know how to describe it, but there's no time. So it seems like forever, but then it seems really instantaneous at the same time, right? Because it doesn't pass by you. It's just like, whoa, this is so cool. I wanted to stay here. And then I blacked out. And then I came back in, but I wasn't, and I found myself, was all scratched up because I was trying to, save myself from going deeper into the tunnel. But I found myself about 100 yards above river, looking at where I, basically drowned. And I'm going, how did I get above river if I, got sucked down river? So, that divine intervention, and it was totally blissful. It was heaven. So, but from there, it allowed me to tap into the consciousness or the knowledge on how this reality works, because it went beyond space and time. And that's what I do now. I'm still connected to that consciousness or that knowledge. And that's where, again, my abilities come from. Yeah.
This sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. It is amazing, beyond amazing.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? It doesn't even get contained within that word. Have you had other experiences as well?
Yeah, the third one, and I've had, many near-death experiences because, I'm into extreme sports and I do stupid stuff sometimes. But the third one was, I was in Peru, and this was just happened like a year ago or somewhere around that time. I think in May of last year, so almost a year. And that's where it was a physical issue where somehow I got depleted from my minerals. Maybe it was the elevation in Peru, because where we were, Cusco is about 15,000 feet, which is pretty high. And we're at like 900 here where I live. So so my minerals were really depleted. So basically, I didn't have enough potassium for my heart to keep pumping, or my muscles to, I couldn't really move that well. So my heart stopped. And that one, I watched myself like I was watching over myself as my son was holding me down in the emergency room. And that was it. I looked at that. And it was really sad, to see my son. And then I just evaporated into darkness. And that, it seems like I didn't experience anything. It was just blank. It was just a void, which now I understand is really important, to be in that void where nothing exists, but then it also allows us to have everything exist at the same time, because there are no limitations. So after that near-death experience, the third one, my ability is really good. But then after the third one, my ability is like really ramped up. I can see more clearly, like I can read your patterns. Something that would have taken me, like back in the day, it would have taken me 45 minutes. Before that last near-death, it would have taken me like 10 minutes. Now it would take me maybe a minute or two to help shift you or help rewire. And people cure themselves of the craziest issues.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, crazy stuff, right?
Yes, but no, but yes, but no. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I find this stuff absolutely fascinating after having my own near-death experience. When you're talking about different parts, I'm going, oh, I resonate with that. I can understand that. I think probably one of my biggest questions for you is, why do you think you've had multiple experiences?
Well, I take advantage of things. I when the opportunity arises, in a good way. So a near death, to me, or if you were awakened again, it allows you to, instead of taking, like step by step, say consciousness or elevation of self. If you have a near death, if you put numbers to it, say 0 to 100, if you're at level, say 5, the next step would be 6 and 7 and 8, because that's how life progresses, right? Step by step. But if you have a near death and you're awakened, it's like, gosh, I'm at level 5. Gosh, I can go to level 90 or whatever that you want. And then you jump, it catapults you to higher levels of consciousness or awakening. Without spending time, because you literally disconnect from time. You go, gosh, how high can I go and not distort myself? And then you reconnect. So it's like, oh, wow, that's a cool way of ascending, and so it makes it a lot easier. The gifts that I have would probably take lifetimes to learn. And I've done it in less than maybe 11 years. So literally just radically, almost like Buddha type level, or Buddhist type levels, you can access with near deaths. So again, that's why it's just a faster way. And this is what I teach people, by the way. You don't have to have a near death, by the way, to have fantastic abilities or have a fantastic life. I've done it for you, so you can just learn from my experiences. So, or yours. And that's what we're here for, Christy. People who've had those near deaths, and that's why you've probably been called to do the podcast and so on, so you can share your wisdom, so other people again don't have to have that experience of having a near death, because we've done it before, so you can learn from that.
And that's something that I hear a lot of, is I wish I could have the experience. And there's something that goes with that as well. I always get asked as well, why do some people have them and other people don't? And then, like yourself, why do some people have multiple experiences? And the variety of answers, I find them fascinating, because they're everything from, well, I was off track, or I just didn't learn it well enough the first time, or this was in my soul plan, I planned this before I came, or it was an act of God, it just had to happen. It was a wake-up call. I've heard so many different answers. So then to ask you why you've had multiple, but you're talking about knowledge, you're bringing back a piece of knowledge each time. So then Do you think it is it like you couldn't bring back the full amount of knowledge from the first experience, from one experience? Is it too big for this world, or
Well,
why
one,
multiple?
yeah, really good question. Well, with the work I do, with people, and I see it all the time, is like they start to awaken into their brilliant self, and they have to say their body has to adjust to the new level of frequency. So say that you're plugged into, like here in the US we have 110 volts, you're plugged into 110, but you have a near death experience, or like I help you awaken, and then you're plugged into a 220 volt. And if you're not, say, set, your body isn't set, it becomes very destructive. That's why a lot of people who have near deaths, they don't know how to handle it, and they become
Yeah.
suicidal, especially
Yeah.
with kids, right? Because it seems more brilliant on that side than the distortions, especially if they're sick. The kids, is like, gosh, I don't want to be here. I'm limited here. They don't understand the concept. So they go on to that near-death experience, and then they come back, and it's like they don't like their lives because they didn't adjust to it. So if my body couldn't really adjust to well, you have physical, say, limitations. So you would have to take it step by step. And people do that on, the 18-day hyper meditations that we do. Again, we take them step by step, and it's literally about releasing all the things that you're not. Like some of the genetic patterns, how people age, illnesses, how we see relationships, and all that. Those belief system that creates you, those have to get eliminated, and then a new version has to step in. Okay, so that's why I would have 3 near-death experiences, because it'd be way too much. And I would probably deteriorate physically here rather than accelerate and expand. So
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. And I think also considering reintegration when people come back from these experiences, and you've highlighted that can be, that's a whole factor in itself. So that makes sense to me. I was thinking it's probably too much to have all of that in one event and come back and still be okay.
Yeah, and I'll give you a limited event, an example, so it's a lot clearer. Say that you lived in or your standard is like a 1-star hotel or a half-star hotel that you always check into, right? And then somebody goes, "Hey, you know what? You're worthy of a 5-star hotel." Or in Dubai, they even have a 7 or 10-star hotels.
Oh,
but yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, so like, your standard of self is at a 1-star. They put you into a 5-star hotel. You would not be comfortable in that 5-star hotel. And many people go, "Oh yes, I would." Many people destroy themselves with that success. I mean, look at the people who go overnight fortune and fame. What happens to them? Most likely they commit suicide because they can't handle the success.
Yeah.
So that's why. Yeah, so you really have to graduate to that higher level.
Yeah.
And own it.
What was it like for you when you had, I'm going to start with your first experience when you're on sorry, I'm not sure what you call them over there, rail car? Like a train?
Oh, the rail cars? Yeah, the trains, yeah.
Yeah, and you'd had your head crushed. I was fascinated that you talked, first of all, about popping out of your body, so you didn't feel the pain, that you actually were able to witness it. So that's an interesting factor for me. But after this happened, you're 22 years of age. What did you do with that when you're back in your body, you're here to stay, you're recovering? What do you do with that?
Well, the first few months, it was really, really fantastic, because after I had my jaws unwired and I could actually eat, because I had to suck through, all my food through a straw, basically for about 3 months. But after that, eating and touching things and so on like that was really an amazing experience. And then you wanted more and more. But I didn't know, say, the mechanics on how to have more or be in that state all the time. So after that, I kind of got depressed and wanted to go back, because it's like, it's so burdening or so heavy here, especially when you're awakened and you see the heaviness, of this reality. And a lot of things didn't make sense back then either. Like nowadays, kids questions like, why do we have to do this? And why does this happen? And so on like that. It's because it's like they're seeing it from the higher level. And it's like, gosh, this doesn't make sense. This reality doesn't make sense. And if you look at it, it doesn't make sense. So I got kind of bummed out. I wanted to like literally go, it'd be kind of cool if I had a near-death experience and go visit that place again, which is dangerous, by the way. So I wouldn't suggest it because you can't plan a near-death experience. It has to be planned from a very high level. You can't go, oh, just go to the border of death. There's movies out there.
I'm reminded of that one, Flatliners.
Yeah, Flatliners.
Years and years and years ago.
There's another movie, not recently, but the past year or so, kind of similar as Flatliners. They go out there, but again, that really distorts them. So that's what I wanted to do. But then it also allowed me to push through and know that there was something out there grander than what I was living, where I was today. So it really pushed me to like seek what was out there or expand out of the shell or identity that we all have. And that allowed me to have more abilities. I started to tune into people. I started to tap into people. So that's where my abilities started. I could start reading people, a little bit. It's like, that person has whatever kidney issues or whatever. It would show up for me, but I didn't really do anything with it. Well, I did. I used it to, create fortune, or success, physical success for myself. But that wasn't enough. Again, I wanted all of it. And that's where the second near death came in, which allowed me to understand the mechanics of this reality and, edit it for myself and then also for other people as well.
Was there a time when you felt like it was really, you've talked about how you got a little bit depressed, but where it was really dark and you're questioning, why did this happen to me? Maybe feeling a bit more of a victim. This isn't fair.
That came like after the second near death. His dark times of the soul. I mean, Jesus went through it. People who go through the programs, the XI programs, they kind of go through it. Not that deep though, because it's a safety space. But for me, nobody was there to help me. Nobody was there to guide me. Or it's like, oh, you're at this level and so on. So I had to find out on my own. And the dark nights of the soul is literally about, you understanding that there's a higher version of you here, but you're still living this version, and this version is holding you back. So the dark nights of the soul, or nowadays I call it detox, is basically you allowing your old self to die off so you can transcend into another version or another simulation of yourself in space-time, or again, another dimension of self. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah. It does. How you do that, maybe, I don't know if you have any words on that, but it makes sense, the concept you're talking about.
Yeah. So literally the dark nights is like, you wonder really about why we're here. What the hell am I doing? But the way I did it wasn't like I'm bummed out or, like you said, a victim type. Like, why did this happen to me? I'm going, okay, I know where I am now. And I know that it's really, really dark and limited here, but how the heaven do I get to this level that I know is there for me? So I was like trying to find a solution to like break free from the identity that we have here. So that really helped me. Again, it took me about 3-4 years, some crazy, crazy journeys through the time. Realities got distorted. I thought I was going crazy. My wife at the time thought I was going crazy. But the truth had to come out or blossom, and any lies that I lived had to die off. So after about 3-4 years, I understood it, and that's where where I lost everything. I went bankrupt and all that, and that's the moment in time. It's like, well, I was really bummed out, and I was like, damn, I lost everything. And then this voice came to me. It's like, well, what have you really lost? And it's like, you're right. What have I really lost? And it just put me into another dimension of myself, and I never looked back from that point on. And it's just like, and that's where my abilities really, really grew and expanded. So it was the death of the old me and then a blossoming of the new me.
Mm.
A totally different life, by the way.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine how different that was. Yeah. You're talking about these abilities. You've talked about being able to read patterns and see things.
Yeah.
Are you happy to share a little bit about that? What does that look like?
Sure.
How does that feel? What was that like when it first happened?
Yeah, well, when it first happened, I mean, it was very archaic compared to what it is now. I used to see, say, geometric patterns and so on like that around people. I used to see storylines or storyboards and so on like that. I used to see physical frequencies around people, or I never saw chakras or auras or anything like. I saw auras, but I never see chakras. And well, it's not even auras. I would see a person's essence or a person's spirit. That happened after my second near death, and that's the difference as well. I read your spirit level, not your chakra or aura, because that's a physical representation. So nowadays, it's just a knowing. So you might think it's psychic abilities, but I don't. It sounds like psychic abilities, but psychic abilities is where you channel something, or you see something outside of you. I actually just know. So like if like I'm scanning you to see what's going on, I can go back to the point of, say, your near death experience and how you got, say, trapped in it for a little bit, if that makes sense to you, and then dislodge you. So my abilities are basically, you don't have to tell me anything about yourself. You don't have to tell me your name or anything like that. I do a lot of this, by the way, on Moss on Sunday. If you go to Sajady.live, and it's free, you can see how my abilities work. Basically, I can scan you and go, oh, this is what happened to you. This is what's holding you back. Let's rewire you so the rest of your life looks different. So I change your frequency, by the way. I don't heal you where you are. I go, there's a better version of you in this dimension of space and time. This point where you are, or this version that you're running, is limiting you, right? Mm-hmm. It's got abuse patterns, it's got destructive patterns, and so on like that. Let's change the channel or change your frequency. It's just like literally clicking the channel. If you don't like one channel, you change the channel to another tune. It's like, let's change the channel where you resonate. So I don't fix you here. I just change the channel and then you fix yourself. Does that make sense? How that works?
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's us that has to do. So you're talking about you're changing the channel. Mm-hmm. What do we do to step into that new channel, that new frequency?
Yes, really good question. So basically, I allow you to go, oh, this version of you it's corrupt. It's not working really well. Okay. Mm-hmm. In this version though of yourself, because there's, we have, millions of different versions about us, right? So I find you a better version, and I go, you know what, that version is better for you. So I see the higher version of what you could be. So I open the door or the possibilities, or push you into that. It's what you need to do is go, oh, you know what? I like this version of myself. I need to let go of this version. Some people do it really fast. They just literally like walk into that new version, and there's no detox or, dark souls of the night type patterns. But some people go, well, why did that happen to me? Or, what if I let go? I'm worried about, my parents, or I'm worried about my spouse. And, they find reasons to latch on or hold on to the old version. So it takes a little push and shove. And your higher self always wins, by the way. And then you let go. So it takes a little longer for those types of people. But by the way, when you're a better version, the loved ones around you always also become a better version. So
yeah. I love how that happens. It's like everything around us, if we raise our vibration, everything comes with us somehow. I guess that's a little bit of like law of attraction type thing as well, where
true,
we attract different things. I've noticed that when something starts to go really well, then everything around sort of starts to go well.
Yes.
Yeah, we take it with us.
And I like the way you said it, because what we do elevates all aspects of you. It's not just your money patterns, ascend, or your relationships get better. Literally, when you awaken to a higher sense of self, everything around you, including your loved ones, will have to change and adapt to a higher version of self.
Mm. Mm. You
So,
said something just a little while back about how there's potentially lots of versions of us. I don't know whether you use the word thousands or millions of versions of us,
yes.
all here and all available, and how
Mhm.
we can raise our frequency to step into a different version of ourselves.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts around multiple dimensions? Can we be living different versions at the same time?
Oh, yeah. I deal with that all the time.
Yeah.
And again, even going back to like Albert Einstein, once he started to see the multiple dimensions, or Tesla, he got his ideas or concepts from, again, another reality, not this reality. So you are a multidimensional being. You can render yourself you can have millions of possibilities of yourself, but there's only one possibility that you can say render or have or breathe in life to. That makes sense to you.
Okay. Yep.
But sometimes when people are afraid, say like kids do this a lot. They don't have a safe environment. They don't, their mother is crazy or whatever it might be. So what they do is like, gosh, this environment feels unsafe to me. So their body stays in one environment and then they'll go into another reality because it's safer there. So they get stuck out of their body. Or people who have been abused or raped and so on like that, they have a blank stare to them, right? So basically they take the abuse, but their spirit disconnects, and then they have a hard time coming back. That's why they always have a blank stare. Or again, like kids, they have PTSD, ADD, ADHD, and a lot of the issues that young kids have, and even adults, if they don't resolve them, is because of they live in multiple realities, and it distorts them rather than just one. A lot of diseases come from not knowing where you are literally in space and time, like MS, for example, Alzheimer's, and so on, like that.
Wow,
We've had amazing
interesting.
success. Again, I'm not claiming to cure anybody, but again, we've had amazing success with, say, diseases that can't be cured. People cure themselves of them. So.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you're talking about Alzheimer's, because I don't know what it's like there, but over here, some of the research is coming out that there's more and more incidents of Alzheimer's, that it's becoming a bigger problem for particularly our aging population. And I've often wondered, what is it that's caused that? Is that something that 50 years ago, maybe it was in our dietary intake, maybe our food? Well, we know our food was quite different. But I'm always curious as to what sets the stage now for the future. And so you're talking about this. Is it potential that maybe spiritually or energetically we're doing things different?
Yeah, and even the foods that we are having, not, the foods, I don't know how it is in where you are. You're in Australia, you said?
New Zealand, yeah. Yep.
You're in New Zealand. We're in the US. Again, it's not the best foods. It doesn't allow nutrition, for the brain to function properly. So we would have more incidences of Alzheimer's and so on like that. So one is the nutrition, but then also, we're so disoriented in who we are, especially with, social media and TV and so on. It displaces us. We lose ourselves. You can see somebody on their phone and you can feel, or at least I can, it's like they're not there. I don't know where the hell so they're just a carcass. So that really distorts people, especially young kids. That really distorts them. That's why like electronics or media is bad for them. It's not, Facebook or anything like that. It's just the fact that they get disoriented on where they are or where they're creating themselves. So as they age, their brain has a tough time. There's a couple components, and it could be a week-long lecture on this, but there's a couple components to people. So as they disassociate from this reality, as they get older, their brain starts to malfunction physically. And then this is where they start to get Alzheimer's, or those individuals that, like you see grandpa and you see them physically there, but you can see that grandpa's checked out because he doesn't know how to hold his space. He doesn't know his higher self is basically, so you're seeing again, the physical form of grandpa, but his spirit is like somewhere else.
Mm,
That's
mm,
why grandpa looks like he's checked out. So society is basically checking out of this reality, unfortunately, through, I'm not blaming technology. We're just using technology wrong. So we're
yeah.
displacing ourselves. And then this is where higher incidence of Alzheimer's and so on happen.
Okay. Do you think it's ever okay that we can just check out of where we are of society? Is it okay to be checked out?
Well, there's always a consequence. So I guess it's okay, but again, the consequence is that when you step into your body, you will feel foreign to your own self, which is really disheartening for people. And this is where
Yeah.
people will check out more. And this is where your physical form always has to have, say, be fulfilled. So this is where abuse happens to you or you abuse yourself. So there is, again, consequences to checking out. You want to stay
Mm,
in your body and dominate your space. And then that way you stay healthy, you stay vibrant, you don't age like most people do. You tap into your abilities without destroying yourself. You become naturally abundant or successful, happy, all that. But if you're checking out to be happy or to find yourself, it doesn't work out. People on
mm,
spiritual journeys or ayahuasca and plant medicines and so on, they check out. They don't do it properly. So when they try that stuff again, their body stays here, they escape, and then when they come back, it's disheartening. So then they'd have to do more, if that makes sense.
mm,
And that's where addictions come from. What we do is like, no, let's find yourself here. Let's clean out your body, your hereditary patterns, genetic patterns. And then what happens is that you can expand into yourself. So whatever experience you have, whether it's plant medicine or, psychology or whatever, you're expanding into yourself. And then you know more about your world and yourself, and it becomes a happier place.
mm, mm.
If you check out too far off, this is where depression happens. And then if you're way off from where your body is, this is where suicide happens. So suicide is not a consequence of how you were raised and all that stuff, or even chemical, although that's an after effect. It's literally how disconnected you are from. It's basically your spirit creates a version of you in a dimension of space and time. So your spirit or a computer is projecting that upon this reality, and then it loses track of where it created it, and then it dislocates, and that's where you feel disconnected or out of yourself or not in time.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I'm a big believer that we're here for a physical experience and that we are in these bodies for a reason. And you talked about in one of your experiences how when you're back in your body, how it felt heavy and you were 1% of who you actually were confined back into this physical body.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I find the conversation around checking out and the balance between being here physically but being also engaged in a spiritual place
Right.
really interesting. Where do you see that meditation comes into this?
Well, meditation, or what we do, is called hyper meditation. So it's a little different. It's a deep dive. It's a very deep level meditation where I guide you into deep levels of meditation, deep states, where you have more access. So it's kind of like a near-death experience, but not like you don't have to have that experience. But anyway, you get so disconnected from time where you can see yourself from a higher version of yourself. So that's what we do in the hyper meditations that we do. So basically, you're at a level 4, say, for example, again, numbers don't mean anything. You're level 4, I disconnect you and go, gosh, you could live at a level 6. And then when you come back in after the meditation, it's like, whoa, I'm level 6. What do I need to get rid of? So that 1% of what most people live like, their spirit like enters their form. And this is where they're living at 20% or 30% of their, say, experience, or 50%, you'd be at, say, Jesus's level and so on, like that, or 50 or higher. But anyway, most people live at 1 or 2%. So the key is that most people, again, what they do is they escape their body through success or spirituality and so on. But the key is they escape in this case, what you want to do and what's more natural for you is to come into your body, or you invite your spirit or your timeless being into your body. And this is where you go, gosh, I have potential here. And that's why you've created yourself. I mean, your body took, gosh, I don't know, 1 trillion years to evolve into the being and the technology. It's amazing, how amazing we are. Just the vision that you have. Or I was reading about placentas and so on. It's crazy how technologically advanced a placenta is. You know what I mean?
Wow.
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I think about the body quite often and just go, whoa, it's so complex. And the way that we heal ourselves, and I'm not talking like through any practice, I'm just talking if we cut ourselves, and the way that the body can heal itself and create the wound, and just all of the way, all the intricate systems within our body. And sometimes I just think, this is amazing. This couldn't happen by chance. It's
So why
just
would you
amazing.
leave it?
Sorry, say that again.
Why would you leave it behind? It took you,
The body.
again, a trillion of years to create this beautiful form. And then most people want to escape or not live this beautiful form and go, well, the afterlife is important. No, you're here for a reason. You've evolved for a reason. And again, that's the key. Once you dive into yourself, that minimal 1% of who you think you are, it elevates to, 10, whatever percentage. And then you go, gosh, now I know why I'm here. And it feels really grand. So the possibilities that you have, and we all have these possibilities deep within us, right? The power within, as Yoda put it, the force be with you, and so on. They all talk about the potential that we live inside, but we can't access that. And it aggravates us. So this is about living that potential within your physical form, not escaping it. And this is, again, where wealth comes in, happiness comes in. You don't have to age like you do. Like I'm 62 years old, and feeling really vibrant. My checkups are always of a 30 or 40-year-old.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
And getting younger all the time. So.
Yeah, I like that idea. And I like the feeling, perhaps some of our listeners can relate, when you do something and you're like, I feel like I'm truly living, and you've got maybe some endorphins going, it's exhilarating, and you're like, this is amazing. I want to tap into more and more of that. And that's a very physical experience.
Yes.
So I love the physical aspect. Don't get me wrong, I look forward, especially after interviewing so many people around their near-death experience, I look forward to visiting that place again where I felt free, and just, you talked about the love was just amazing, the freedom, the experience. I think after this physical realm is going to be mind-blowing, incredible.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, I want to get the most out of this time. I want to live that life that feels exhilarating and live more than my 1%, my 2%.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the key. You start living it here in the physical form. So when you cross over, you don't have to start at, say, level. If you're a level, 1%, you don't have to start at 2% when you cross over. So the higher you can get in physical form here, the more expansive you can get when you are, say, crossed over. And that's really the key. So this reality is literally a catapult for you to accelerate yourself to understanding who you are at a higher level, understanding like your spirit of who you are. So when you do cross over, it's even more brilliant. Death, by the way, most people don't do death right. They die. And they just literally, it's not an awakened death. So what happens is that they get stuck here. And then a lot of times, especially like suicide or people who die through, I think it was New Zealand. I just had a client before this interview. I go, is your husband around you? And he goes, oh, he passed. They do euthanasia now in New Zealand or something?
Yeah, we have the End of Life Choice Act, which does have some things you have to go through. It's not something which is just handed out freely, but there is the option here to choose your own death.
Because I'm going, your husband seems like he's on the table. So again, I see things like that and I'm going, well, let's let him free. So when you do death wrong, basically what happens, like in this case, her husband, he knows he's dying, but he basically is like, he was on the table and I go, I'm just seeing him waiting to die. And he goes, and then she explained that they do euthanasia in New Zealand now. And it's like, oh, well, they do it wrong because again, he didn't awaken to realize that he is separated from his body. So his body is void, but he's still at this level. He didn't escape this level. So you want to, again, awakening properly or know how death works. By the way, that's one of the biggest issues. It's a pandemic issue. Most people, again, they don't know how to die, and it really screws up the people being born, and it screws up this reality.
Wow. By the way. Wow. I've never thought about how dying changes being born, but I guess it probably would.
Can I explain that for you really quick?
Yeah, sure.
So when people die, and I'll give you an awakened version. When people die, they get close to death. And as they get close to death, they start to realize the patterns and functioning that didn't work out for them. So they get to clean it up. Does that make sense to you? So that's an awakened death. They clean it up. And then when they rise to a higher level of consciousness, because they don't have that physical form, when they clean up, that means that their genetic patterns clean up off their kids. And then, so they don't have to age like their fathers or mothers did. They don't have to have the same relationship patterns. So it's a nice cycle. And then say those kids of the parents that died, they'll regenerate and have kids, and then their genetics will change to a better version. But nowadays, what happens is that it's not an awakened death. The burdens of that death is laid upon the burdens of their children, if that makes sense to you. And then what happens is those kids have kids of their own, and then that burden just passes on. So our genetics, our DNA doesn't clean up after a death. It's supposed to. That's what's called evolution. But in today's society, this is why we repeat history over and over and over again. This is why we repeat heart attacks. Like your great grandfather had heart issues. You've got heart issues, 5 generations down, and that's been proven, by the way. Animals, nature doesn't do that. It evolves. So if you had a disease, if you had a disease or a virus that comes into a lion family, a species, in 1 or 2 generations, that disease will never show up again because they've learned how to resolve it. In humans, we just procreate more and more of the same stuff. 10 generations down, that person has even worse heart disease than, the person that had it. Or say somebody went through famine 5 generations down, and again, there's tons of studies that the offspring of that person over here would show symptoms of famine or PTSD from war. Their offspring, again, 10 generations down or so, would have issues with PTSD symptoms of somebody from war, and they've never experienced war. So that's, again, wrongful death or not an awakened death. By the way, if you go to xiphysics.com/crossing, it helps you understand the concepts of death, which will really awaken people, by the way. So even if you've had a near death, it awakens you. So.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important thing to be talking about. We'll put that link down into the show notes. So if you missed that, just pop down, have a little look at that. Highly recommend going there. I think it's so, so important that we're talking about death and that we're talking about these experiences. And I do think there's a huge amount of healing that can come through them. You're talking about generational memory, generational trauma, even like spiritual stuff that we pass down through generations. We might not be able to see it, but it's there. As you were talking about that, I was reminded of stuff that we can carry over through different lifetimes. So I'm still on one path of thought that we had earlier, which was around having multiple versions of ourselves. Perhaps we can tap into different options of who we are, it's not different dimensions, I don't think, but different possibilities of who we could be. What do you think around reincarnation and multiple lives? If we live our 1% this lifetime, do we come back to live another different 1%? Is it done and dusted?
That's the key, Christy, is like you're supposed to awaken. So you're living more than 1% of yourself here in this lifetime, in your current
Mm,
lifetime. That's really the key, is inviting your higher self in. So you're not just living the 1%. You don't have to wait till the next lifetime. You can literally awaken now and live more of yourself, which allows you more possibilities the next lifetime. But
mm,
from what I've seen, yes, and I do believe in reincarnation. From what I've seen, some people have like like they don't, again, they don't close off death properly. So an experience from their last lifetime like bleeds through into this lifetime. If you think
mm,
of it as an accounting year, Christy, like, when you go through death, you're supposed to go through an accounting system, and then you carry that last number over in accounting. Does that make sense? And that's
yep,
all
yep,
you carry. Okay. And that's what nature does, by the way. It carries the last number over and it takes off from there or learns from there. But what most people do, whether it's like hereditary patterns, what you did from mom, dad, and grandma, and so on like that, or previous lifetimes, is that you didn't close off your accounting year. So whatever happened that year or that lifetime, everything about it
very good.
comes into this lifetime or
Yeah,
next
right.
generation. So does that make sense? So
Yeah,
like say
yeah, it does.
father had a lot of issues, he didn't cross over properly or he didn't complete. Again, the processes got muddled up. So basically, the child of his child would have the burdens of the father. Sins of the
Yeah,
father, as we call it in religious text, right?
yeah,
So we're carrying the burdens of our predecessors, whether it's again generational patterns or previous lifetimes.
yeah,
So
right. So we can be carrying our own stuff plus other people's
and,
patterns
and
and
that's
memories
and
and
that
things.
and that yeah, and that's what we do here. Is like when I look at you, I go, "Oh, you got this from your father. You got this from grandma. You got this." And it's what you're living. What most people live is not their lives. It's a version or an accumulated total of their predecessors, their parents, and so on like
Mm,
that. So
mm,
what we do is like, and that's why people might have the most fantastic life on the outside, but on the inside, it's like, this isn't my life because it's
mm,
not their life. It's
mm.
a version
We,
of society and and genetic patterns and previous lifetimes.
yeah,
Um, so
and
what
we
we
hear
do
that
is,
so often.
yeah, exactly, and that's why. And people go, well, I need to change my career. No, that won't happen. It's not going to help you. Or I need to make more money. I hear that a lot with successful people. If I can just make that next billion, then I'll be happy. Like, well,
Mm,
you've reached 20 billion and you're not happy. 40 billion is not going to make you any happier,
yeah, yeah.
because again, they lose themselves. Again, it's because they're living somebody else's, say, pattern or recipe of their life, not
Mm,
their own. So what we do is like, let's get rid of those patterns. Let's get rid of the genetic patterns. Let's get rid of your previous lifetime patterns. And then you get to decide on how you age, how your relationships work, how money works for you, how spirituality works for you, and so on like that. And again, it doesn't just improve your life, it improves everybody around you. And that's how we really change or awaken the world.
mm,
So,
mm. That sounds incredible. I'd love to jump into some of that. So, what does that look like? You're talking about that's what you can do for people, that's how you can help people. Is that via a one-to-one session? Does somebody sign up for that? Is it a course? I know you've got your meditation that you've talked about.
you can
How
do
does it
one on
work
one.
practically?
Yeah, you can do one-on-one sessions and so on like that. I would suggest not to. Right now, we've got like about 1,000 people waiting list, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But the Moss on Sunday, which if you go to Sajady.live, you could really get understanding, because it's not psychology. It's very, very different. It's frequencies, not
Mm,
psychology or anything physical that you do. It's about what you're resonating at, what frequency or what channel or what dimension of time that you're in, or what dimension of self that you're in. And by the way, it sounds really out there, but you see more and more movies like Doctor Strange. The latest Spider-Man was all about multi-dimensional self. Everywhere, everything, all at once. That was about the multi-dimensional self. That's what scientists are studying. I
mm,
mean, I'm in it all the time, and that's how I change you. So decades of therapy could be reduced for about 10 minutes, especially for kids. by the way. And I can give you tons of examples on how kids have transformed in like 1 10-minute session. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Wow.
so I would suggest there's a ton of free stuff out there. Sajady Live, the podcast, XI podcast, that's out there for you. There's a lot of YouTube videos on how exponential intelligence works. And then you can get into the hyper meditations. We have free meditations online as well. And again, if you go to xiphysics.com crossing, there's like the science behind it, and then some meditations that you could do, AM PM meditations that you can do just to get you started, and then the 18-day meditations. And then once you're ready, once you understand it, I would suggest maybe a one-on-one session. But by then, you've massively transformed. Really, the 18-day hyper meditations that we do, Christy, is amazing.
We will put the link to all of those websites, the meditations, everything down in the show notes. So I encourage our listeners to go in and have a look. We've had so much amazing conversation today. Thank you, Mas. If there was one message that you felt, one thing you wanted to leave us with, what would that be?
Well,
it's a big question.
Yeah, for your audience, again, your audience is always like searching outside themselves. Start to look inwards, and then all the blessings that you want, the meaning of life that you want. Again, start to look inwards. And when you do look inwards, sometimes we get a little scared or we get a little depressed. It's like, gosh, that's who I am. But that's not who you are. Just note that the bigger version is buried in you somewhere. So just keep pulling all that stuff that you're not, and then you'll find the bigger version, and that'll blossom for you. Okay.
I like that. Yep. I like that. And I often feel like everything we need is within us. And absolutely. I want to tap into more. I've found this conversation so interesting because we have talked so much about being in the physical and the 1%, growing that 1%, having this physical experience, but also being so aware of what is available and other opportunities. And absolutely. Yeah, it makes me feel quite excited. I get excited about life and living, even though I've had my experience and I believe that there's something so incredible to come. I just feel like life is exciting and we should have fun and get the most out of it, squeeze the juice out of it. And I'm absolutely. Reminded of so many parts of that as we've talked today, Mas. So
thank you so much. Yeah, and this is really the great opportunity because the universe is expanding and changing so fast. It's really a great opportunity for you to get on the train of time, so to speak, and really see your potential. It's time. It's time.
It is time. I love it. Mas Sajady, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.